What I'm about to say will not sit well, because if we're talking about one of the biggest supervolcanoes in the world, Yellowstone, it doesn't sit well, what I'm about to say, but I say it anyways. What if one of the biggest things we thought we knew about the Yellowstone supervolcano was wrong? Yeah, that's what a new study that just came out says. So it says the system that is feeding the Yellowstone supervolcano may be much shallower, much more laterally connected, and much more controlled by tectonic forces than the simple picture many people have had in mind for years. Much shallower. Do I need to translate that? Means closer to the surface. So, much more tectonically controlled. Does that mean we need the earthquakes that appear at Yellowstone, we need to take that more serious? Do we need all these phreatic explosions that we've seen in the last 2 years? Do we need to take that more serious? What is happening? Because what I just said, yeah, that is just the frame of this new study. But what does this actually mean? I mean, first it sounds like, oh, is magma closer to the surface? Is this whole thing about to blow? Well, let's look into this. Let's calm down a little bit, guys. Take a deep breath. I'll explain it. Yellowstone is widely recognized for its crustal magma reservoirs that are being replenished by asthenospheric melts. But this new study, this new paper argues those primary melts may not be rising in one simple vertical path from deep below Yellowstone. Instead, the study is indicating, and they say, that it travels through a tilted translithospheric magma plumbing system, a slanted underground pathway that dips into the southwest beneath Yellowstone. So what does that mean? Because this is a major shift in how Yellowstone is being understood. But before I tell you this, guys, do me a quick favor. Like and hype this video, share it with your friends. Doesn't cost you anything, but it helps my channel. Thank you so much for your support. So, the old simple image that we had about Yellowstone is basically this. Deep magma rises more or less straight up from deep down, pools in magma chambers, and then it feeds the volcanic system above, right? Deeper magma source fuels it up into magma chambers, and then from there, boof. But this new study says the plumbing system, this is what we call what's going on underneath a volcano, is more complex than that. So is that good or bad? The supplementary material says that there's multiple independent seismic tomography studies and magnetotelluric models that consistently show this southwest dipping magma plumbing system beneath Yellowstone is there. That means they see it as a robust feature, not just as a result of one model, like one unusual model or something like this. So in order for us to really understand what this study is saying, we need to look at this graphic here. It explains it really well. Yellowstone may not be fed by one straight vertical magma pipe underneath the caldera. So instead, there may be a slanted underground magma highway coming in from the southwest towards Yellowstone. So deep, hot mantle material moves eastwards beneath the western United States. That's where Yellowstone is, right? And some of that melt enters this tilted plumbing system and then migrates upwards through the lithosphere towards Yellowstone's shallower magma reservoirs. So in the graphic, what you see, the red melt represents deeper basaltic melt, magma, right? While the lighter melt near Yellowstone represents the shallower, they call it rhyolitic magma system. And the really important point is that magma underground does not automatically mean eruption. So calm down, right? Does not mean eruption at the surface. The study shows that there are places where the melt exists below, but the crust above stays too close and acts like a lid. So like a lid of a pressure cooker, we can say. It stops the magma from rising easily. The cap rock layer, so to speak. We're talking about that when I'm talking about the supervolcano Campi Flegrei in Italy, in Naples. That cap rock layer is weakened. It's very weakened, and there's multiple studies about that, right? So here in Yellowstone, it seems to be solid, so it can't rise easily. There's not cracked areas where it would have an easy pathway to the surface. It needs to crack the cap rock layer first. So the big takeaway is that Yellowstone may be fed by a tilted underground magma highway from the southwest, and the eruption risk depends not just on magma being there. This is the interesting part, but it depends on whether the crust above can fracture open and can let it rise. And here is where it gets even more important. The new paper argues that Yellowstone's magma plumbing system is mainly shaped by tectonic forces in the lithosphere. So tectonic forces, what about the earthquakes, the forces? Are they breaking the cap rock layer? So what we see in that study, they say that major structures, including the subducted Farallon slab and the Juan de Fuca slab and mantle wedge, are included in this model. The Western United States lithosphere and the convecting mantle. Juan de Fuca, we just talked about this regarding the Cascadia fault system. We have an earthquake swarm right there at the Juan de Fuca Ridge. Juan de Fuca Ridge is where the plates are being torn apart. And then the Cascadia subduction zone, Juan de Fuca plate underneath the American plate. So how is that connected with Yellowstone? So you understand, this is turning into a story that is not just telling us there's magma underneath Yellowstone. Scientists already knew that there is magma. But the real story is that in this new study, they're changing the picture of how the magma gets there. How is the magma getting towards Yellowstone? What is controlling its path? And why may Yellowstone be fed by a long tilted system rather than a simple straight up pipe? That matters because the hazard models that we have for Yellowstone, they do not just depend on where the magma is stored, but on how it is transported and what conditions allow it to actually rise through the crust. So if that is completely different, do we need to change the hazard models? So now, before people run with this and start seeing Yellowstone is about to erupt or something like this, this is not what this study says. And that needs to be very clear. And so I'm making this very clear. We have a study that has been done by the USGS in 2025. They have mapped the magma beneath Yellowstone. They have used magnetotellurics and found that the overall percentage of this rhyolithic melt across the Yellowstone volcanic system is generally low, which indicates that an eruption anywhere in the system is unlikely right now. They also said the northeast part of the system appears to have a direct connection to a crustal basaltic heat source, which could matter for future magma generation over like long time scales. But again, that does not mean an eruption is imminent right now. So what does it actually mean when we combine these two findings, what they found in 2025 and what that new April 2026 study says? The picture gets a lot sharper. So USGS study improved the picture where the magma is stored beneath Yellowstone. USGS says it is underlain by two magma bodies, a shallower rhyolithic body found about 5 to 17 kilometers, about 3 to 10 miles below the surface, and then a deeper basaltic reservoir from about 20 to 50 kilometers, that's about 12 to 30 miles deep. So the shallow rhyolithic chamber is mostly solid, with only about 5 to 15% melt, and the deeper basaltic reservoir is also only partially molten. So that's a crucial point. You might already understand that, because a lot of people hear like, wow, magma chamber, right? And they imagine a giant underground like ocean of liquid rock just waiting to explode. But that is not how the USGS describes Yellowstone. These are mostly like mushy, partly molten bodies with like relatively low melt percentages, like not giant, fully molten chambers that are ready to erupt tomorrow, like something that we're seeing in Iceland right now, again, underneath the Reykjanes Peninsula, where the magma chamber is ready to blow fuller than ever, but small eruptions compared to Yellowstone. But what that new study says, and what we learned from is that the deeper supply may be coming from the upper asthenosphere through this tilted plumbing system, and that the whole thing is likely controlled by large-scale tectonic deformation. So that is new. So their model, what they looked at, covers part of North America, includes the lithosphere asthenosphere interaction, and it's designed to explain how mantle flow, lithospheric structure, stress, and deformation all work together beneath the western US. The western US, not just Yellowstone. And then there's another key point that I think a lot of headlines are going to miss. The new study says that having magma below the surface is not enough by itself to control whether eruptions could happen. So one of the biggest things that we thought we knew about Yellowstone was wrong. So this brand new study says the magma that is feeding Yellowstone may not be rising straight up from some deep mantle plume like far below. Instead, the system may be getting replenished from a much shallower hot material in the upper asthenosphere, and that magma is being guided through a tilted underground pathway that dips to the southwest beneath Yellowstone. So what does that mean? It's shallower? Is it closer to eruption? Is this thing going to blow? Sounds scary, and it matters because that changes how we picture this entire supervolcano. So for years, a lot of people imagined Yellowstone like a more direct, like a vertical engine with magma rising from great depth into a big chamber, like collecting in a magma chamber underground, right? And that's at some point, it's going to blow. But this new study argues that Yellowstone is connected to they call it tilted translithospheric magma plumbing system, instead like a long channel-like system that links the caldera and the magma reservoirs to partially melting hot material in the uppermost asthenosphere beneath the eastern Snake River plain. So they're saying that the southwest dipping structure shows up consistently across multiple seismic and magnetotelluric studies. So this means it's not just one weird model, so it's consistent. And this is where it gets really, really interesting. The new model says Yellowstone's magma system may be shaped less by a classic deep plume and more by tectonic forces. Tectonic forces, really? We thought that that wasn't the case. But if I say that to you in simple terms, like hot mantle material is moving eastwards beneath the western United States. And when that flow interacts with the thick North American lithosphere, it helps stretch and tear the lithosphere in a way that creates this southwest dipping conduit for magma. So that is a very, very different picture from the simple, like straight up magma pipe that people often imagine when they hear the word supervolcano. So now, before we all panic, this does not mean that Yellowstone is suddenly about to erupt. And that's a crucial part. And we have a major study that has been done by the USGS that has mapped where the magma is stored beneath Yellowstone. And they found that the amount of melt that's stored across that system is generally low, which indicates an eruption anywhere in the volcanic system is unlikely right now. And they said that very clearly. But what an earlier study did show, though, is that the northeast part of the system has a direct connection to a crustal basaltic heat source. So that means that if future magma accumulation becomes important anywhere, the northeast may be the area to watch over the long term. This might be the area where the next eruption could happen. So if we put the USGS and the new study together, the picture gets sharper. So USGS paper helped us to show where the magma is sitting and suggest that the northeast could matter in the future. But this brand new April 2026 study is more about how the magma is being supplied and moved through the system. In other words, one study sharpened the storage picture, and this new one sharpens the supply and the transport picture. Where is it coming from? And there's a really important detail here that most headlines will miss. The new study says the surface volcanism is not simply controlled by having magma underneath. They say that what really helps eruptions happen is fast, non-compressive deformation in the cold, brittle middle to upper crust, because that creates fractures in which magma can move through. So they say there is a volcanic gap in the eastern Snake River Plain where an interconnected deep plumbing system exists below. But the upper crust deforms too slowly, so it acts more like a lid and diverts magma away towards areas where the crust is easier to fracture, right? It wants to come up here, holds the lid, so it's trying to find other ways. Magma always is looking for the easiest way. And that's a huge point for hazard thinking. Magma below does not mean automatically eruption right above it. That changes everything. And that is basically what makes this study so important. It does not say Yellowstone is erupting tomorrow. It says scientists may be getting a much better map of that engine that drives Yellowstone, of that engine below Yellowstone, how it's fed, how it's organized, and why some parts of the system may store magma without erupting, while others become future pathways. That is exactly the kind of research that can reshape hazard models without meaning like disasters around the corner, but we're learning more about it. So I hope you found that interesting. As always, please like, hype, subscribe. If you want to support the channel, want to fill me up with coffee, link is in the description. Thank you so much for everyone who's doing this. Thank you for your supers. Click the join button to become a supporting member with videos about what's happening behind the scenes in my private life. So here's something interesting that I have in the end screen for you that you really should watch out. Are we seeing a new volcano being formed off the coast of Washington State? It's not actual seamount. It's really interesting. Click here and I see you in a second. Bye-bye.